Okay. Hi everyone. My name is Arrow. That's my screen name. I also am known by my YouTube username NoLimits2 Coasters. This is my first time streaming, so just forgive me. I have no clue what I'm doing, so just bear with me as we kind of figure this out together. So I'm just gonna let this simulation play out a little bit, um, while I'll briefly explain what Three Blind Mice is and a little bit of background of today's stream. So, in case you didn't know what Three Blind Mice is, basically, here, let me just pull this up for you so you can see some of the forces. Three Blind Mice, this is a competition that happened over the weekend. Very exciting. Basically, there's 3 people per team, one track designer, one supporter, and one person on the environment. My role, obviously, was the track designer. So you can tell. Hold up, just making sure this thing is showing up. Am I streaming? I have no clue if I'm streaming. Hold up. I think we're live. Are we live? I think so. Anyway, back to it. Here, let me switch it back. So basically, Three Blind Mice, you don't know who your teammates are. You each get 2 weeks to do your assigned role, and from there, you don't know what the project looks like. It gets passed on to the next person, and then, I mean, at the end, everything is supposed to come together, and for what I've seen, everything came together off everyone's projects. Before I start talking a little bit more about uh, my design, I just want to give a quick shout out to my fellow teammates. That's Dan Pan the Man on supports, Lounlim and environment. I also want to shout out the judges and organizers, the other contenders and participants, and especially the viewers for kind of helping organize this and making it a reality. I do also want to mention that for this video strictly, we're just going to be looking at the track itself. We're not going to look at the final product and what came to be at the end. I did include in this video's description a link to that and also a timestamp if you want to skip right to this project. But I highly suggest you sit through all of them because, I mean, that hour and 50 minutes or whatever it was went by so quickly. I was absolutely immersed in every single one of the projects. I think everyone did fantastic. So Rad's just finishing up. I'll pull up this force calculator and speed a little bit so you can see. Man, forgetting all the buttons in this game. We'll switch over. Forgive me as well if the quality of the video isn't coming on too great. I have a lot of applications loaded up while also trying to run this. So basically what I'm going to be talking about in this live stream is just an overview of the ride, some of my favorite points of it, some of the hardest moments when it came to designing the ride, and overall inspiration associated with a couple of the elements, how I build the ride, G-forces, and the unfrozen coaster will also be revealed in this as well. So you guys can see a little bit about the track styling and how I shape a little bit of my elements, because I do have a pretty unique build style. And I'll talk a little bit more about the POV too. And I'm also going to talk about my iteration of this coaster, because even though this was a team project, I did kind of mess around a little bit after my role was done a few months ago, and kind of started putting my twist on what I had in mind. And you're going to see some similarities between what I actually created and the final product. It's like my teammates knew exactly what I was going with this project, and there were a couple missed opportunities, but I'll get into them later. But I am completely satisfied. I'm over satisfied with the output of both of my teammates' work. So I couldn't be more impressed. And also I'm going to talk about finalizing the coaster. And that is also going to be talking about the smoothness and roll points and kind of going over a little bit of the comments that I've kind of not overheard, but heard from other people in the contest and also some judges. I'll give you a back row as well. Briefly, before I exit the simulation, I will give you this whole POV, but I want you to know that when I build my coasters, I don't use the free-flowing ride view. I'll switch views in a second, but I like to use the stable view because it kind of makes everything a little clearer for me when I'm designing the track where specific points needed to be adjusted. Um, as you can see, for the most part, this ride is fairly smooth. As I did mention, I'm going to get into some of the struggles that I had with this ride and a couple of its elements because it was some elements were a little bit of pain in the butt for me, honestly. But others came across very, very nicely, which I am very proud of. So I'll continue letting this POV play out, and then I'm going to go into game mode and we'll dissect the layout a little bit and I'll show you what's up. Just looking at this POV, I'm sure you know exactly what I'm talking about with some of the moments, but others that some people didn't like apparently were some that I took extreme pride in, and I was taken back a second by the missed opportunity for such a brilliantly placed element. So before I do that, I will this view, ride view. So you can see it's a little bit more unstable. So it's a little harder to kind of understand if a ride is smooth in roll vertice respect. So I will give you another shot. I'll give you one of my favorite shots actually. And we'll do like a little off-ride action. I will fast forward this a little bit so we can skip right to the good stuff. So yeah, being the track designer though, it's very, very quite limiting. I wasn't able to adjust the spine strength. I wasn't able to even put catwalks in. The only thing I had some freedom over was the direction in which the coaster was facing. So originally, I'll get into this when I show you the top view. When I design a coaster, I always go from left to right. The same thing kind of applied with this ride, but my usual build techniques kind of were all over the place compared to normal because I wanted this ride to feature specific elements. And before we even got our assigned roles, uh, I did prepare myself. I wanted to have like a clear vision of some of the key elements I wanted to include if I was the track builder. I wanted to know for sure what the ride was going to be, and kind of have an image in my mind of the inspiration. And a couple of the judges and other viewers picked up on some of that inspiration, but a lot of the elements actually are very different than you might expect they would be. So this is the top view of the project. As you can see, the footprint is a little bit odd. The beginning of the ride is very twisty and very compact, and toward the end it does spread out a little bit and kind of snake its way back to the finish line a little bit. Give me 1 second. I had a flow going, but I just want to make sure that this stream is actually working. Let me like click on it and see. If you have like questions or something too, like please let me know in the comments. All right, back to it though. The ride, I usually design my rides left to right. So this ride, it does go left to right, but it was placed a little bit differently. Originally, I had the station actually everything. I'm looking at this now. Everything was a little bit different. I went right to left in this case, but the station here was originally placed going this way, and I designed the ride kind of going from, say, this middle point here, shooting off to the left. So when thinking about the final placement for the ride, it looks completely different from an entry's perspective on what side you enter it on. So it kind of could have changed the entire perspective of the ride from the supporter's point of view or the environment's point of view when just opening the file, because if this ending part was the back side of the ride, it would have gave the themers and environment honestly a completely different perspective to work with, because in the final product they use the station and brake run and also the first launch as basically in a cavern, so it was completely covered. If it was the other way around, I'm not sure it would have been the exact same thing, or who knows, maybe it was, but it's just something that I thought of. I thought that this view was the best view, keeping everything basically in a straight line and making it a little bit easier for the supporters, because that is very important. But when designing the ride, like I said, I always start with a station, and then put in the transport, and then I knew I wanted the launch to be directly after that without any BS. I just wanted to go directly into the launch. And then from there, usually I would just build the ride as the ride would go. I would end with the final brake run. So that's why some of my ride layouts have pretty short brake runs, is because I find a way to make it back, and it just gets there. But this one, I did things a little differently. After I designed the first launch, I went directly to the final brake run. And this final brake run, because I knew exactly what I wanted to do with the ride before I got started, I knew in my head that I wanted a signature element in the middle. I'll get to this element in a second because I got a couple nice reviews regarding that. But just real quick, this brake run, where I placed it, because I knew this middle part would be where the ride would be, I strategically placed it so that when you're sitting on the brakes or just going through the brakes, you would see the entire ride. So that was the only thing that I was a little bit like, dang, that's kind of a missed opportunity. But I love that it was inside of a cavern. I think that was a great touch. And if it was anything that was different, I'm glad it was a cavern and not like, I don't know, like anything else. But just something I thought of when I was designing the coaster. It's just that I wanted the ending to kind of have a very cool viewpoint. If it was open, if they kept like the kind of ride layout open, I will show you in my iteration where the direction of my version was going, and you will see that that focal point is there. So yeah, station, brakes, and then moved to the launch, and then I designed this element first. A couple people were saying that the shaping was a little bit odd. I think I nailed it personally. I'm not sure why it looked the way it did in the results video, because it feels like it rides a little bit differently when viewing it from my perspective. I'm not sure why. I could be completely wrong, but after designing that element, instead of continuing on with the ride, I actually designed the placement of the second launch immediately after. So I wanted to be very close to the first element after the first launch and kind of keep everything in that linear kind of section, kind of squaring off the layout a little bit. As you can see, they're very almost in line with each other. So after placing that first element, I did move right over to that launch section and got that in there before going into the top hat, and then the rest kind of just fell into place. But right after this zero G winder, it's a Taiga inspired element. Everyone kind of gets that. It's right along the same lines of Taiga shaping. It's a little bit more. It starts inverting a little bit sooner, so it's not as lateral heavy. There's a little bit of lats, but it's not. It just feels more like a dive loop rotating the other way, which is exactly what a zero G winder is. But from there, it goes into a little bit of a stangle dive. Classic. I gotta have those on every Intamin. It's one of my favorite elements. One thing I do put emphasis on in my track layouts is snappiness to the elements. I do make sure with Intamins, I design it how I want the ride to be if it was real. I'm a big fan of snap in coasters. And in my opinion, you only get those on Intamin and Gerstlauer. Maybe Iron Gwazi, I haven't ridden that, but not really RMC in my opinion. Don't hate on me, but snappy single dive here. Not really inspired by anything. If anything, it would be Maverick because that ride is famous for him. This part of the layout here, this outward bank turn or outward bank airtime hill, this element was the first element that gave me a little bit of trouble. And originally, this element was a twisted airtime moment, kind of going like this before meeting up here to kind of snap back into that 180-degree turn. But this element did give me some trouble. The roll vertices were just not really, it wasn't doing it for me. So I left it as it was for quite some time, actually. I believe I finished a good 3/4 of the layout before I actually went back to change it. But I then made it into an outward bank airtime hill just to kind of help with making the ride a little bit more smooth. So you can see it does flow very nicely into this kind of turn to snap. Oh yeah, before I go any further, I do want to talk about why I chose to build an Intamin Blitz. So as you know, my channel is full of them. This is the ride I'm good at. This is the ride style I'm good at. I've always been good at this building style. Even with old school B&Ms, I'm pretty good at doing those as well. Part of that is because they are more snappy. But I mean, I chose an Intamin because I'm comfortable with it. It was a safe bet. It's like actually huge NoLimits contest. So I just I did play it safe. Next year, I definitely will not be playing it as safe. But I stuck with my roots and it did pay off. I'm very satisfied with the results. And where are the team placed? See, I still don't like that. I'll get into that later. But I was in one other NoLimits 2 contest. That was back when Coaster Con was at home. I was in the recreation contest and I actually won that for recreating Great Bear at Hershey, which I'm proud of. So as you can see, the ride snaps into this 180-degree turn. And I am going to unfree this coaster actually right now, so you guys can see the G-forces. Now they're applied. Let's go back a little bit. So this is that first element. As you can see right off the bat, as soon as it's done with its pull out or whatever, immediately you're floating 0G. G-forces pick up at the bottom. You'll get a pop of airtime headed into that stangle dive for another pop of airtime exiting. Got that outward bank. Then this transition into the 180-degree turn, some more airtime as well. It's one of the things I focus on when designing my rides as well, is I really want no dead spots to the layout. So even if it might look like nothing's going on in like a POV for the ride, just know that the forces are always kind of being applied no matter what. So that's kind of evident in a few spots in the layout. Some might surprise you towards the end, but this is just one instance. Some laterals going into that turn. Yeah, laterals, especially being that I hand build all my coasters, I hand build all my coasters. I've never used FVD. I don't know how to use FVD. The laterals is very hard to play with, especially when you only have 2 weeks to do a project. That's kind of the thing that I'm not going to say it comes last, but in my design process, that is one of the last things I do when designing a coaster. I kind of get the layout in and brief roll vertices, but after I go through and finish the layout and go through and smooth the whole coaster out like a million times, I then go in and kind of tweak all the roll pointices, which is kind of why they're scattered around all over the place a little bit. We'll get into those laterals in a second. Let me just backtrack. So as you can see, some of these roll vertices are really kind of spaced out far from each other, but I do a pretty good job of making sure that you're not kind of wobbling all over the place. In my opinion, they're kind of all stuck to one direction. Again, you'll get another little bit of airtime, slight moment. You'll feel it before a little bit of a tight valley into kind of the relaxed pre-launch 2 preparation. So I wanted something here that was a little bit less intense because I knew that the second half of the ride was gonna be a little bit more crazy. So as with most Intamin LSM's coasters, I did want to keep it a little bit more realistic in a sense that because it does kind of die out a little bit before the second launch. So second launch happens, a beautiful pull up into this top hat. A couple people said my top hat wasn't shaped right, and I do agree that the top hat is a little tight. The entry, well, the two twists they did give me some major difficulties when designing the ride. It was kind of one of the last things I was messing with before submitting the file. And even from this track view, going in and looking at it a little bit, it does pull a couple laterals, especially on this downward section in the back row. This whole bit and these everyone's been calling them the eye speed turns. Yeah, those were a challenge for me. Um, so this top hat, I don't know. I haven't really done too many top hats in my No Limits 2 days. I've done one on my channel before. Um, and I think it was pretty good. But I am nowhere near an expert, and I don't have the FVD software that kind of helps gauge forces and kind of laterals and all that sort of thing. So I kind of designed it where you'd be able to experience the peak amount of airtime, and this is what I got. This is what I got. I'd definitely be working on that in the future though, 'cause like I said, Intamin multi-launch coasters are my favorite type of coasters to build, so I'll definitely be making more. Um, but yeah, right after this top hat does go into the little S-bend I-speed section, as people were calling. And this is another moment of the ride where I kind of wanted to mess a little bit with the forces, kind of take away a little bit of all the G-forces that were going to be sustained in this section. So I did kind of, you could see the many track nodes that are kind of in this area that were put there to kind of make a little bit of weightlessness a little bit. As you could see that there's still a G provided, but it's nowhere near the excessive 4Gs there, and then again transition into like literally 3.5 4Gs here. So I wanted to kind of switch things up a little bit, and throw in a variety of different forces for that specific element. This is my favorite element, and I got a lot of good compliments about this element here. I am so surprised. One of the judges even mentioned this. I'm so surprised I've never seen an element like this done in NoLimits 2 before. The inspiration for this stall twisted dive loop, absolutely beautifully shaped. Please give me some credit. I am so proud of this element. I think this was my favorite part of the layout. I knew going in before even building the coaster that this was what the standout element was going to be. So I've been thinking about this one for a long time. And I'm so glad it fit perfectly into the ride layout, and it gave it that kind of unique defining feature that kind of separates it from a lot of the Intamin blitzes that I've done in the past, and a lot of them that are also on YouTube as well. I've never seen anything like this. If anything, it takes inspiration from Ride to Happiness at Plopsaland, but I actually took inspiration more so from Storm Runner at Hershey Park, being that I wanted it to be very snappy at the apex. As you could see, it's a very snappy transition, transitioning out of that dive loop, out of that stall into the to the dive loop. So you could see it snaps. It's a little more graceful going into this 0G stall, and it's not too long either. I honestly think stalls are a little bit overrated. But that's just me. I knew I should include a variation of it in some sort of way in this layout. So this is just what I came up with. And I think it's much better than a traditional stall, but it doesn't go on too long before you snap real quick into that twisting dive loop. But yeah, inspiration from Storm Runner there. It's not the only inspiration from Storm Runner in this layout. I'll get to that at the very end, but Here's another couple views of this element. I'll put on this G-force comb again for you to see. As soon as you twist into that stall, you're out of your seat, and then it's consistent airtime all the way through the end, especially when you're getting absolutely yanked through the top of that. As you can see from this perspective, these roll points are set at 80 and 87 and 90 degrees, and they are not very far from each other at all. Surprisingly, this was one of the more simple elements to design, in my opinion. The most difficult part of it was the exit of this roll, kind of making sure everything was smooth as it kind of went back into that linear direction. But I mean, that was my favorite part of the ride, hands down. And I'm very proud of how this element came together. It did give me a couple issues at the bottom with the valley, a little bit of shaping, but I was able to fix those. This other Stangle dive, the massive Stangle dive, I guess you could call this inspiration from Carnan at Hansa Park. The way that thing just whips through its Stangle dive right after that weird outdoor section. I guess you could say that's where this inspiration came from. Again, airtime into the element while you're snapping into it. A little bit of laterals too. A little bit more force is applied at the top before a little bit of a stronger pop of airtime exiting the element before reaching the lowest part of the layout. I knew I wanted something with water around here. Themer absolutely nailed it. This inspiration, the element inspiration, not really came from a specific ride, but I was kind of thinking of Terran, when making this element, when it kind of rises up after the second launch and kind of does a little bit of a snake down. That's what this kind of entry and exit is a little bit. Airtime exiting, of course. And two, this is the strongest moment of airtime on the ride. This is where some people were saying the ride gets very linear, kind of where it kind of drifted away from its compact nature. Yeah, it does. But as I mentioned before, where the brake one was designed and kind of how this twisted dive loop stall element kind of made the ride go back away from the brake run, I needed it to kind of make its way back. And with it, keeping the ride layout pretty realistic in length and duration, instead of doing some twisty elements, I kind of was like, hey, I'll just let the themer do his own thing, see what he comes up with. Maybe this could be like some either secluded part. I don't know what you're thinking with the design or whatever, some secluded part, maybe like an entry plaza area or something. It could have been anything. So I just wanted to get back to the station with a couple of powerful elements, and that's exactly what I did. But wanted this inspiration. This element was basically Velocicoaster inspired, with its airtime just being a little bit more strong and the 0G roll being a little bit more whippy. But this is the strongest moment of airtime on the coaster. I needed that traditional moment of airtime on this ride because there really isn't. It provides a lot of force. If you're in the back row, I think it's like, I don't know, like negative 1.5 Gs, which is a lot. If I could change anything about this airtime hill, I would draw out this exit of the element a little bit, just because I do think it's a little steep given the pace in which it takes it. Then here comes another one of my favorite parts of the ride is this 0G roll. It is incredibly snappy. Some may say a little bit too snappy. I could agree it's a little bit snappy, but the laterals are honestly very, very good for this element. I think I got a comment saying that the laterals for this 0G roll are a little out of control. I thought they were pretty nicely handled on both entry and exit, but this part of the layout was a little bit lateral heavy, and this is the most challenging part of the layout for me when making this ride. Inspiration, of course. A couple people picked up on it. Pantheon, right before its stall, it has this little juke to the side, if you want to call it like that. Which I find so weird. Nobody ever talks about that. And like when they're discussing the ride, like that's an element. I know to Terrace, or I don't know how to pronounce it. It has an element similar to this as well, right before its stall. It's classic, intimate maneuver, kind of filling up some space. I'll make the trek on over. So you can see all the forces are evenly applied. Tight 0G roll. Yeah, the laterals for this gave me a lot of issues. I'm not sure what it was, but it never felt put together right, and I still don't think it's put together right. If looking at the layout, I was completely confident submitting it and what it was. But a couple days before the actual judging, I went back and looked at the layout, and I was like, yikes! If anyone picks up on that, which I know they're gonna pick up, I was like, that's gonna kill me. So if I moved these any other way, like it would have messed with the entire ride basically. So I don't know. I didn't want to mess with it too much because what I had, I was pretty comfortable with, a little comfortable with, but it's very lateral heavy. And this element is a little bit lateral heavy as well. The twisted airtime moment here, which is also one of my favorite rides. From this moment on, I'd say about this moment on, the rest of the ride is inspired by Storm Runner at Hershey Park. I'm sure nobody would have guessed that, but that is the inspiration for this element of the ride. How Storm Runner just kind of does some weird maneuvers into the brake run. I kind of wanted something similar with that, so I designed this twisted airtime hill. A couple people said that they wish that this element, or I'm calling it element because it is an element, but this part of the ride should have just been a strict valley. But because the ride is so bam bam bam, and the variety of forces that I created are so frequent, that I thought a valley in this section just would have been too fluid. Like I needed something a little bit more jarring, in my opinion, because that's just how I like the coasters to be, um, and that's exactly what I did. So you kind of don't really get too many G forces right after this element, and you go into a little bit of a downward section where you're gonna get some airtime. This is moment I specifically designed it to include airtime, and you'll get lifted out of your seat a little bit. You'll definitely feel the change of force, but I think this element is one of the most slept on in the track layout that I did, um, because no one really expected to do much. They just kind of was figuring that, yeah, it's just gonna make its way back to the brake run, kind of an easy way. But no, it's like when you're riding it, I'll slow it down too, so you could see the shaping. You could feel the difference. Like you'll be pressed down, you'll be lifted up real quick, slammed down, and a real quick rapid pop into the brakes. I don't know. I thought that was absolutely genius of me for including that, and especially since where the brake run was designed and how I had it, the 180 curve and the actual main brake run designed already. This is what I got. And another reason too that I left it as is that, give me a second, that these two elements here are on the exact same elevation plane. And I had no clue what the themers had in mind. I'm not sure if the terrain was going to be on one level here. I wasn't sure anything, which was part of the fun for the contest. So I made sure to kind of consider that maybe sudden elevation change, like a drastic elevation change like that, I don't know, wouldn't be it. But I made sure that it was on a very similar elevation plane just in case, which is another reason why I did not make it a valley, uh, for that reason. But that ending to the ride, I don't know. I'm super proud of how this ended. I will show you another couple POV shots of it too, because I think that kind of understanding the ride a little bit more now might make you see the ride in a different perspective, possibly. I could be completely wrong. But we'll take another ride. I'll show you the forces again. I'll put that right here. And let's see the coaster. After I show the POV a couple times and do some more off-ride shots, I'll show you my iteration of the ride and what I have started working on. I'll show you my iteration of the ride and what I have I'm just now looking at the comments on my phone. I'm so sorry that I have not been watching them. But thank you. Uh, with the comment about the stall dive loop, I definitely think it was an E element. The helix turnaround reminded you of something you'd seen in FEDL layout. I don't know, because FED is very consistent. If it's done right, it's very consistent in the way it looks. If this is what you're talking, the helix talk, what you're talking about is this helix element, then yes, I would agree. But if you were talking about the first one, I would say it's a little bit more jarring. We'll do another back row. Speed it up a little for you. Yeah, where they roll on the exit. I know exactly what you're talking about now. Yeah, that was kind of the one of the dead spots of the ride, in my opinion, though, personally, because it's just basically a turnaround just to kind of get the ride going off in a different direction. Um, but that's just my opinion. It does provide some consistent forces all throughout it. I made sure of that too in my shaping, that the forces wouldn't lessen because of the loss of speed. Um, dude, that's so snappy. It's genius. Yeah, it really is. I wish I was a little bit more specific with my design process. Like, I don't know if I'm doing a good job explaining this or not. I'm just kind of rambling. I have no clue where I'm going with this. Um, but it was my thoughts were all over the place. My thoughts were all over the place. I was thinking something different every single day, especially the second part of the layout. I didn't know if I wanted it to be kind of vertical like that, um, or linear like that. But it happened like that because I wanted to keep it within like 40, 400, 4,000 feet. Oh, my bad. Within 4,000 feet. I think the ride as a whole is about 3,800. I wanted to keep it within normal LSM parameters. You did environment? I'm pretty sure I did see your project actually. What team were you again? I won't be able to look at it immediately, but I will make note of it and go back to see. Oh, thank you. Yeah, the ride is only about 3,700 feet. It's not very long at all. It's definitely one of the shorter ones. You were Golden Links. That was a major project. Absolutely major. You guys killed it. Yeah, I'll definitely gonna go back and check out that POV for sure. I still go back almost every single day and take a look at them because I'm just so impressed. I'm so impressed. I'm just giving you guys a couple of my favorite viewpoints. No, he actually did fantastic. I'm going to show you my iteration of the coaster after this cycle or maybe another cycle or two. And you could see that just based off what I had in my mind, he kind of took that image right out of my brain and actually did it. I'm not very good at environment at all. I cannot do anything in regards to environment. I just do scenery, so just hilly terrain and realistic woods settings for my rides, if I even do that. Um, but he literally took my vision right out of my head and perfected it. And that track design too, the texture, that was insane. That was absolutely insane. And the trains were beautiful too. I think the trains also helped make my ride seem a little bit smoother as well. Um, I'm not sure why. It just seemed like it was a little bit smoother um, than in this game. But when checking the smoothness of my coasters, I do use the stable view, like I mentioned earlier, because it shows where the flaws are with the shaping. for the elements. So I was kind of surprised that most of the videos for the judging were actually with the kind of more unstable view. But I'll give you a couple more, few quick angles from this viewpoint, and then I'll flip over into my iteration of the ride and what I've started on. I'm nowhere near complete, but I mean, it's coming along. Now that the contest is over, I really haven't done much NoLimits 2 work. I've been pretty busy the last couple days, so last couple weeks actually, so it's been pretty difficult getting some NoLimits stuff out. So I'm gonna leave that there, and I'm gonna load up this park file what I've been working on. I'm not redoing the ride, but I'm kind of working on my iteration of the coaster. So kind of designing it how I envisioned it in my head before, say before themers kind of took it on. So this is my vision so far. Got a little bit of support work done, a little bit of the terrain work done. I wrote down colors I was thinking of using, and also maybe a potential name. I also did mess with the track style settings as well, to kind of make it more modern, Intamin Blitz-esque, while kind of having some traditional shaping to it. So you can see this is taken right out of Taiga's track layout. So yeah, catwalk's in, styling, track styling is in, some supports are in. The entire first half of the ride is actually supported, and also scenery is getting there as well. I'm not messing with the elevation anymore, so that's finalized as well. But a couple things left. And then this is what I was talking about with that water, the very low point of the ride. And this is kind of where it's going to get tucked behind the trees, and snake its way back. I'll show you that viewpoint I was talking about at the very beginning of the live. Yeah, this is what I was also mentioning. I was on the same plane. The brake run view that would have been nice if it was incorporated. Coming into the brake run, you get this beautiful view of the coaster. That's why I specifically designed the brake run to look like that. So that's the one missed opportunity. I said it before, and this is my last time saying it, but that's the one missed opportunity. I think that this view is absolutely beautiful, but I like the cave. I really liked the cave. Yeah, so let me pull up some of the statistics actually. Yeah, so I was going to name the coaster Kira. I was thinking for supports, making them either brown or copper, and having the track be a black or kind of a charcoaly color. You can see it's just standard rocket coaster with new and strip settings and Heartline, of course. 4 trains of 4. I haven't messed with the colors yet. And these are the statistics. Yeah, 3,700 feet. And 3,600 actually without the storage. Max height's 146 feet and minimum height's 8 feet. So I mean, it's pretty realistic in what you get with an Intamin coaster. And again, just looking at my iteration of the ride, just messing a little bit with supports. Everything has remained the same though. I haven't gone back and tweaked any of the element shaping itself, just because I am not going to do that. I am done touching the track over this ride. That kind of I was just doing that for so long. I'm just over that. But we're gonna finish this up one day. Maybe I'll release a POV of it, work in progress, to the channel if you're interested in that. I'll just have to screen capture that, and we'll post that. We'll give you a POV this layout, not this layout, but this iteration. We'll pull up. Yeah, I did set it to be evening time, so you get a nice little 5 o'clock shadow. I feel like the ride also runs quicker depending on the time of day in NoLimits 2. As weird as that sounds, I really do think that's true. I've ran this simulation from sunup to sunset, and the ride pacing definitely changes. I just think that's a really nice touch. From the viewer's point of view, are my support columns a little bit too thick? I think they're a pretty good thickness because I don't have the stress for the track very high at all. So that kind of absorbs most of the forces. But if you think they should be a little bit thinner, then maybe that's something I consider doing. On one thing too that I did notice in the final product of the ride was that the supports were squared off. The footers were squared off and not rounded. Personally, I would have made them rounded, but that's just me. 20-inch thickness minimum for supports. That's exactly what I did. I think in more more high stress areas, like where the top hat's going to be and where there's going to be a couple connecting points, like where this the supporting is for the dive loop section of that element, will be 24s, but I do think the rest of them are all 20s. Main sports on tap and double version 24. Exactly. See, we're on the same wavelength. We're on the same wavelength. Yeah, but that's just the direction of where I saw my project going. And he did a great job. I'm not going to be showing the final project in here just because I don't have that file. So if you want to see that, like I mentioned, that is in the link to this video. I do have a timestamp to the force of nature as well, if you're interested in seeing that. But this is just my iteration was of what I was thinking the project's gonna be. It's so incomplete. I apologize, but yeah, the environment and support people they did absolutely fantastic. They got the vision and definitely executed it much better than I think I would have been able to do. Consistent force there. Pop up. And my favorite element, second favorite element, that little storm runner bunny hill. I love that part. I was glad to hear in a couple of talks, like meetings after the live event had ended, a couple of people said that they thought my track was underrated. And personally, I do think it was slightly underrated. I'm not being biased or anything. I do think the layout was slightly underrated. It's very realistic. It's a very realistic ride. And I didn't try to do anything that wasn't going to be realistic. That's part of the reason why I kept the elements in a way that is unique but also realistic, hence this major element here. But I didn't want to mess with vertical transfer tracks. That was insane. That was insane. But I think that's about it for the track design and the creative process for the force of nature. Thank you all so much for your support in this. I was very excited to participate in the contest, and you can definitely expect me to be participating again next year and in any other NoLimits 2 contests. I will try to release some new videos. I have a lot of stuff in my park files that hasn't been unreleased. So maybe I'll get around to releasing some of those. I have a couple really good projects that I've been working on, but those really haven't been something I've posted online yet. I do want to thank everyone again for their time organizing this contest, and kind of want to thank everyone for participating and being so nice. And I don't know, it was a great experience and definitely something I want to do again. I want to thank my teammates as well because they did a fantastic job too. So that's going to be it. Team 13, Force of Nature, absolutely killer Intamin Blitz. Um, expect something different from me next year. Um, 'Cause as much fun as this was, I need to up my game for next year. Thank you, Ren, for tuning in. I'll do more live streams. Maybe I'll do a couple of live streams just describing maybe my entire build process. So maybe I'll walk through a coaster with you at some point. So I'll be in touch. Don't forget about me. Subscribe for more. And thank you again.